Have you ever stopped to think that the camera you have in your pocket, the one you use for selfies and vacation pics, could actually be a serious scientific tool? Well, what if it could be? Today, we're going to dive into exactly that, how everyday tech can be transformed into a super precise instrument for scientific measurement.
So, it all kicks off with a question that sounds almost too simple. You look at a lawn and you see green. That's it, right? Our eyes just make a super quick judgment and we move on. But imagine for a second, you're not just looking at your backyard. Imagine you're managing a professional golf course or a massive sports stadium. All of a sudden, green isn't just a color anymore. No, it's a direct measure of plant health, it's a sign of quality, and yeah, it's a huge financial investment.
I mean, just look at the scale of this place. How on earth do you walk across this whole field and give every single little patch a fair, objective grade? You can't just eyeball it. You need hard data. You need numbers that are consistent and reliable.
Okay, so that brings us to the first part of our story, trying to get that bird's eye view.
So the most logical first step, right? Use a tool that's easy to get, doesn't cost a fortune, and can see a massive area in just a few seconds. Something like a GoPro. It seems like the absolute perfect solution.
But, as with any good science story, a problem shows up almost immediately. And this part is all about chasing the light.
And here he is, our main antagonist, the sun. Kind of ironic, right? It's the very thing that helps the grass grow and lets us see it. But for a camera trying to collect consistent data, it's a total wild card. The light at 9 in the morning is completely different from the harsh light at 2 in the afternoon.
And this really is the heart of the problem. If the light keeps changing, your data becomes totally unreliable. A photo you take in the morning is going to have a different color tint than one you take at noon. You just can't compare them. Your whole experiment kind of falls apart.
So what's the fix? Well, you have to create a consistent point of reference. In other words, you've got to set a standard.
To get around this whole problem of the changing sun, scientists bring in a constant. You should think of this color panel as a color ruler. It's brilliant. Every single one of these squares has a very specific known color value. So, no matter what the sun is doing, the software knows exactly what color that gray square is supposed to be.
And this creates a really clear, repeatable process. First, you fly your drone and snap all the pictures. Second, you use that one picture of the color panel to calibrate or correct the color in all the other photos. Third, the software gets to work analyzing millions of pixels. And finally, you can rank your results with total confidence.
Now here's what's so cool about this. Look at the difference. To our eyes, it's pretty subtle. On the left, you've got the raw photo straight from the camera. On the right, the corrected version. Yeah, it looks a little brighter, maybe a touch warmer, but the difference seems tiny. But to a computer, that tiny change is everything. And this slide just illustrates that point perfectly. This isn't what we see, this is what the analysis software sees. It has gone in and isolated only the pixels that it considers green. The image on the left is from the original photo, and the one on the right is after correction. The computer is now working with a standardized, clean set of data, and that changes the entire foundation of the analysis.
So, we get to the big question. Did all of this extra scientific work actually matter in the end? Let's check the final scorecard.
Here's our first big number. Now, to know if our camera is actually doing a good job, we need to compare it against something, a gold standard. Scientists use a metric called NDVI. You can basically think of it as a professional plant health score, often gathered by satellites. So after the color correction, the camera's data matched that professional score 2.28% more closely. Now that might sound small, but in science, any improvement in accuracy is a huge win.
Let's break that down a bit. The correction actually changed how the software was seeing the image. For instance, it saw a little bit more turf cover overall, but it also found that the brightness was way higher, while a different health index actually went down. This just goes to show you that the correction isn't some simple little tweak, it's fundamentally reanalyzing what's in the picture.
This right here is the million-dollar question for any turf manager. After all that science, after all that work, did we actually get a different answer about which patch of grass is the best and which one is the worst?
And the answer is kind of surprising. In a really interesting twist, the research found that for the top 6 greenest plots, the ranking was exactly the same. It didn't matter if you corrected the color or not. The best plots were just obviously the best.
And you can really see why. On the left, that's plot number 2, the undisputed champion. It was ranked number 1 in every single analysis they ran. And on the right, you've got plot number 9, one of the lowest performers. I mean, the difference is just so obvious that a little shift in sunlight wasn't going to change that outcome.
But this is where that correction becomes absolutely critical. It's not for the clear winners and losers, it's for sorting out that messy middle. And this chart shows us exactly why. On the vertical axis, you've got the ranking from best to worst, and on the horizontal axis, you've got that professional NDVI health score. Each of those little dots represents one plot of grass.
Okay, so the key thing to look at here is the trend line. It shows how well our camera's ranking predicts the real plant health. See, a higher R² value means a more accurate prediction. The black line, that's the original, uncorrected data. Its R² is about 0.64. But now look at the yellow line. That's our corrected data. The dots are clustered way more tightly around it, and the R² value jumps up to over 0.70. This is the payoff. That simple color correction turned an ordinary camera into a much more reliable scientific tool.
And again, just as a quick reminder, this is that NDVI metric we've been talking about. Just think of it as the gold standard for measuring how healthy a plant is.
And this all leaves us with a really fascinating final thought. We proved that color correction makes the data more consistent, more scientific. But we also saw that for just picking out the very best plots, our eyes and the uncorrected camera got it right anyway. It really makes you wonder, when we're trying to measure the world around us, is the goal to get a scientifically correct picture or a truthful one? And are those two things always the same?